What's up, guys? Welcome to the premiere, the debut episode of the Inside Jays podcast. I'm your host, Tyler. And before we get into our first topic, or our main topic of this video, of this premiere episode, I just want to give you guys a little rundown on my Blue Jays fandom and how long I've been a Blue Jays fan. I've been a Blue Jays fan for, I'd say, over 20 years now. Um, I I was actually born the year, or actually, rather, I should say, a few months before they won the World Series in 1991. I was just a little over a year old when they won their second World Series in '92. So yeah, I am born and bred Blue Jays. Uh, I will admit, there was a short period where I wasn't necessarily a fan of the Blue Jays. I just didn't watch the Blue Jays. I kind of zoned them out and was focused on other things. Primarily, this was around, I want to say, from 2011 to 2013, or might have been 2014, actually. So from 2011 to 2014, I kind of zoned out the Blue Jays. I was focused on other things. In particular, for those of you that don't know, I'm a big Vancouver Canucks fan, as you guys can tell from the jerseys behind me and the one on this side as well. I'm a big Vancouver Canucks fan. And speaking of the Canucks, I also host a Vancouver Canucks podcast. So if you guys want, you guys can check that out. It's called The Line Change. So I was mainly focused on the Canucks, especially around 2011, as they were on a Stanley Cup run. And so I was focused on hockey at that point. But after 2014, I started, obviously the Blue Jays acquired some players that intrigued me at the time. And then going into the 2015 season, them acquiring the likes of Josh Donaldson, Jose Bautista coming into his prime. Then you had Edwin Encarnacion on the Blue Jays. You had Troy Tulowitzki. You had Russell Martin. And then a few others are slipping my mind at the moment. But that 2015 team was absolutely stacked. And that's when I really got back into the Blue Jays, was around 2014, 2015, or at least that season. Obviously, it ended in disappointment as the Jays were eliminated by the eventual World Series champions, Kansas City Royals. But since 2015, I've been locked in on the Blue Jays. I've been a fan of them every single year. And I don't want to say faith, but I haven't looked away from the Blue Jays. At least up until this season, briefly. But that was only because they hadn't signed Vladdy by his deadline. And I figured, here we go. This team's going to make the biggest mistake and not sign Vladdy and let him walk in free agency. Hallelujah. That didn't happen. Vladdy re-signed, and he's a Blue Jay for life. So there's a little, a little look into my fandom as a Blue Jays fan. But let's go ahead and let's dive into, our first premiere and video and episode. Our first episode. And in this episode and video, we're going to be talking about Bo Bichette and what's going on with his contract. Vladdy's been re-signed, and that was, a few weeks ago. Now, the Blue Jays need to look towards Bo Bichette and what they're going to do with him. I know prior to Vladdy actually re-signing, and we've known for probably the better part of maybe even a year. It just seemed like Bo was not interested in re-signing with the Blue Jays. He had not come out and said, I want to stay. I want to be a Blue Jay for life, just like Vladdy did. So, and I imagine Bo probably was not happy that there was all this focus on Vladdy, and he was kind of left in the dust, so to speak. But let's go ahead and dive into this article. It's on Blue Jays Nation, and it is titled "Why Bo Bichette's Next Contract Remains a Giant a giant question mark." This article is by Chris Henderson of Blue Jays Nation. The 2025 campaign hasn't started exactly how the Blue Jays would have drawn it up, but thankfully there have been some encouraging signs. One of those positive developments has been the good health and fairly solid performance from Bo Bichette through the team's first 25 games as he entered Friday night, slashing .296, .336, .370 with 8 doubles. The only downside is he's yet to hit a home run so far, which has been an unfortunate theme for the top three in John Schneider's lineup at this early stage of the season. It's certainly a positive development that Bichette looks more like the two-time All-Star that has been among the better hitters in the American League since his debut in 2019. Even if he hasn't hit any home runs thus far, Bichette has twice led the AL in hits in 2021 and 2022, but he battled injuries throughout last season and finished with a slash line of 225, 277, and 322, with just 4 home runs and 31 RBIs over 81 games played. Once considered one of the best young shortstops in baseball, Bichette's value is a very debatable topic, and that's an interesting place to be as the 27-year-old approaches free agency for the first time at the end of this season. The Blue Jays could choose to make him an extension offer before things reach that stage, as they did by agreeing to a 14-year, $500 million mega contract with Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Still, I think it's far more likely that both parties let this season play out and reevaluate things later this fall. The reality is, trying to place a value on Bichette's next contract is a difficult task right now. On the plus side, you're looking at a 27-year-old who has been consistently successful throughout his first 7 years in the big leagues, except last year's injury-riddled output. He's shown himself to be capable of hitting around 300, and at his best, he has also hit for extra base power, topping out with career highs of 29 home runs in 2021 and 43 doubles in 2022. That level of hitter doesn't grow on trees, and getting that kind of production from a key position like shortstop is a real plus. On the other hand, there are questions about Bichette's future, whether that happens with the Blue Jays or another franchise. To begin with, he's long been criticized as a below-average defender at shortstop, and that's unlikely to change as he gets older. To be fair, I think there's still room for growth at his current age, but there's a good chance he starts to show defensive regression before the end of his next contract. It's possible that his next team, even including the Blue Jays, would want him to consider a switch to second base or potentially elsewhere. His bat would play pretty much anywhere on the diamond, but I'm not sure that many teams will view him as a long-term solution at shortstop into his 30s. There's also the question of how much power he's going to hit for going forward. This season, he's already shown that he's back to being a potential 300 hitter, but can he still add some numbers in the home run column? The easy answer is yes, but after only hitting 4 home runs in 2024, granted in just 81 games and while battling some injuries, it's a bit of a concerning trend that he's gone without a home run through the first 25 games. I'm not hitting the panic button at the moment by any means, but I'd be watching nervously if I were working as Bichette's agent. If that agent is selling Bichette as a 27-year-old 300 hitter with 20 to 30 home run power and one capable of playing shortstop at an acceptable level, there's a certain level of compensation that comes with that profile. On the other hand, if Bichette is viewed as a below average defender who doesn't hit for much power anymore and still strikes out a fair bit, that's a whole other thing. If the Florida native has the kind of season that I certainly still believe he's capable of, then I don't think it's out of the question for his camp to seek something like the 7-year, $175 million contract Marcus Semien secured with the Rangers a few years ago. or the 7 years and $177 million that Dansby Swanson landed from the Cubs. If he has another season where he battles injuries and doesn't show much power at the plate, then what? In a worst case scenario, I could see a short term, show me type of contract situation if things don't go the right way, or he could always sign the qualifying offer. Looking at the market for free agent shortstops over the last 5 years or so, I think it's safe to say that Bichette won't be landing a contract like what Corey Seager, 10 years, $325 million, Trey Turner, 11 years, $300 million, or Xander Bogaerts, 11 years, $280 million received from their current teams. Something more like the Swanson or Semien deals feel more like the top end, or perhaps the 6-year, $140 million contracts received by Trevor Story and Javier Baez ahead of the 2023 campaign. But in mind, Bichette will only find himself in that ballpark as a free agent if he has a bowl-like 2025 performance, and there's a lot of season left to define that value. The Blue Jays may have cost themselves many millions of dollars by waiting until this year to extend Vladimir Guerrero Jr., but it's possible the opposite ends up playing out in Bo Bichette's favor by the time he signs his next contract. Until we see what Bichette can produce this year, it's very tough to predict how this one plays out. So that's that article from Blue Jays Nation talking about Bo Bichette and his contract. And it really makes you wonder, now that Vladdy's locked up and we haven't exactly heard a whole lot from the Blue Jays camp on, their next move and whether or not they're going to negotiate with Bichette during the season. We haven't heard anything about that, or at least I haven't anyway. Actually, let me quickly look and see if there's something hanging around here. No, I'm not really seeing anything. At least it's jumping off at me. All right. So, but yeah, as far as my opinion on, what type of contract Bo should receive, I'm going to have to agree with Henderson on this one. I think he's in the range of Marcus Semien and what he got with the Rangers, and then also same thing with Swanson. I could see him getting a 7-year, $175 to $177 million deal. I don't think it's going to break 200. I just don't think at this point Bo has proven that he deserves that kind of money. Granted, as what it mentioned in that article quite a bit, talking about his injury-riddled season last year, and prior to that injury-riddled season, he was pretty consistent, and he was a 300 hitter. But keep in mind, this year he's showing signs of being that Bo Bichette of 2021 and 2022. Granted, I will admit I haven't had a chance to really watch any of the Jays games. I'm still kind of adjusting to when the Jays games are on, as having been focused on my other podcast in regards to hockey. Hockey games usually start about 7, at least for the Canucks, and for the most part, Jays games are in the early afternoon to mid-afternoon, unless it's a weekend like today where it's first thing in the morning. So definitely over these next few days, or actually rather starting Wednesday when the next Blue Jays homestand is, I'm going to be watching some of those games. We're hopefully going to be able to put out some game recaps for those. I know the Jays have a doubleheader today. As of the time of this recording, it's about just before 2:00 in the morning on Sunday. So they have a doubleheader with the Yankees today, later today, due to the game yesterday being postponed due to inclement weather. And go figure, the game is scheduled for 10 a.m. my time, and then gets postponed because of the weather. And then later on the day in New York, it's beautiful. The sun comes out. So, can't really control the weather. But yes, the Jays do have a doubleheader against the New York Yankees, and they have, I believe it's Jose Barrios is the starting pitcher for the first game, and then Kevin Gausman will start the second game. And yeah, so hopefully, I won't be able to catch that game, as unfortunately I'll be at work during both games. Maybe I'll be able to catch a little bit of the second one, but our first actual game recap will come during the homestand starting on Wednesday, and then we'll go from there. So that's going to do it for this premiere debut episode of the Inside Jays podcast. If you like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button. If you're not subscribed to the Inside Jays podcast and would like to stay up to date on all your Toronto Blue Jays content, be sure to smash that subscribe. Be sure to smash that subscribe button, and then turn on that little bell so you are notified every single time we upload a video. If you'd like to follow us and find us on social media, you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, X, as well as TikTok at Inside Jays Pod. And also, if you prefer a audio version of this podcast, you can find us on both Spotify and Apple Podcasts. If you do so, please be sure to rate and review. It is greatly appreciated. But that's going to do it for this debut episode of the Inside Jays podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Go Blue Jays.